what is coming next year is a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford. Every month they wait and the market keeps rising, and people can say, yeah, it's not going to keep rising, but at the moment we don't have any supply. There's a massive shortage. It's going to keep going up at this point. We're having heaps of people moving here. So there's more and more people moving here. There's less and less supply. Prices keep continuing. What's going to actually happen is a lot of these buyers, unfortunately, going to keep getting pushed out. So I think for them, instead of just being busy or just being worried, I'll save an extra $200 a week, actually look at what you can do now.
Big Tommy Egan, welcome back to the podcast. Second time, you're the first time we've had a multiple visitor on the potty, so well done you. Hey, for those who haven't listened to the first podcast, number one, go back and listen to it. But it was a really amazing story that you told, and it was kind of like a rags to riches thing where you really started off with nothing, and then at 18 years old, bought your first house, obviously got involved in the building trade later on, and then started your own building company a couple of years ago. You're a top 10 builder in Queensland now. Surely you'd have to be the fastest growing builder in Queensland.
Yeah, in the state, yes. In the last 12 months.
So a huge story. But interestingly, we had a couple of questions come out of that first potty. So given that you bought your first house when you were 18, what advice would you give to prospective first home buyers who wanted to get into the market? What are some of the things that they could do to try and emulate some of your success?
Yeah, good point. There was definitely some things that I did wrong. So I think the first one would be don't overcapitalise. When I was originally buying the house, it was a 220 square metre home. By the time I ended up with it, I thought it was going to be my forever home. So I ended up expanding it by 50 square metres. I added all these extras to it. And then later on, when I went to resell it, a lot of those things didn't add any value.
Yeah.
So that was a really key lesson that still to now I remember going, I put way too much into that and I only stayed there for 5 years. When most people, I think I don't know what the statistic is, but I think there's like a huge percentage that move out of their first home within 7 years is like the common thread. So adding all that extra value, like extra cost on top of it, making the mortgage harder to pay off, it didn't actually return any money. It was actually a loss. So
it's interesting, because we have a lot of people who, for some reason, a lot of Aussies have got this fixer-upper idea in their head. I'm gonna buy some shit box somewhere and I'm gonna fix it up. What I think people don't realise is, number one, you're signing yourself up for a full-time job. So, you go off and do your job as a nurse for 50 hours a week, and then you come home and you're living in a building site, and then you've got to do that job for another 20 hours a week. So it's a huge amount of work. But looking at it from the financial point of view, whenever I've broken down numbers on a renovation with someone, what I generally find is, let's say you bought a house for, I don't know, 600 grand. Mm-hmm. You do $50,000 worth of renovations. Generally, your house is then worth $650, right? So what I'm trying to say is your renovations, you literally just get your money back, if that, in the rise in value of your property. But then if you take into account just the market going up, most people lose money on it. Like, you would have been better off just holding on to it, not doing any of the work, and it would have gone up in value regardless.
I think the big part, like for me, that stands out with what you're saying is, when you're going to do that, how much time have you put into doing it? Yeah. So like, say you sold it for $650, no problem. But then you're like, well, I've spent every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and every afternoon for the last 6 months at that property.
Yeah. What cost is the 17 fights you've had with the misso?
but do you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, you could have just done overtime at work.
Yep.
Still bought a property. It's increased in price and you didn't have to do... I think a lot of people just always go, well, this is how much I made. I'm like, you've been doing that for 2 years.
Yeah.
How much time have you invested in that, which is money?
Yeah.
Your time is money. So what did you actually get on return? So it's like, oh, well, I haven't... So, from my perspective, as the business has grown and as I've grown, I always look at what's the time that I invest into things, and you get really, really cautious and careful where you spend your time, because the opportunity cost is substantial, and no one thinks about opportunity. They always think, oh, this is just, I'm just focusing on this one thing. It's like you're not realizing that the opportunity cost around you is substantial.
Yeah.
But because you never see it, you're like, oh, well, I'm not losing. It's like, yeah, you are. You just have no idea. You're not aware enough to realize how much it's actually costing you by spending every Saturday and Sunday. Could you be upskilling? Could you be taking a course? Could you be doing a part-time job in a different industry that you want to go into? I don't. Again, for me, it's like, but then you're spending all this time doing what? And I think most people get caught up in the trap of, and I talk to this about the staff all the time, is being really busy doesn't mean you're getting a lot done. Mm-hmm. And I think people just naturally like to be doing something, not sitting on the couch. They're like, well, I'm achieving something. It's like, but what are the results?
Yeah.
So in 30 days, we're going to track it. And then in another 30 days, so in month 2, we're going to track it again. But how much have you achieved in month 1 and month 2? Let's say in month 1 you did 50 hours per week, and then in month 2 you did 80. But what happens if you earned the same money in month 1 and 2? Yeah. It's like people get busy, like people get caught up being busy. It's not what the actual result is, though.
I find the more success that I have in life, and obviously building a business and blah blah blah, what I've found is the longer I go on, it's not about the things that you say yes to so much. It's really about what you're saying no to. It's about being able to narrow your focus onto one thing, which is going to get you the best outcome. Yep. There's this book that I've been reading since I was, I don't know, maybe 17 or 18. I just keep coming back to it. So it's Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Do you know it? Mm-hmm. Yep. And one of the things in that book is it's not the 7 habits of highly busy people. It's not the 7 habits of people who work hard. It's about being effective. And a large part of it is about prioritizing what you're doing and what you're focusing on. So yeah, I guess that's just a long-winded way of saying I agree with you.
Yeah, well, and majority of people get lost in that and just lose a lot of time. Where for us, when you want to buy a property, like in the market that we're heading into, you've got to start making decisions now. And if you're hoping that and then we can talk about this. I know we touched on things, but in a market that we're in right now, what and we'll talk about this later on, but what is coming next year is a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford. Every month they wait and the market keeps rising, and people can say, yeah, it's not going to keep rising, but at the moment we don't have any supply. There's a massive shortage. It's going to keep going up at this point. We're having heaps of people moving here. So there's more and more people moving here. There's less and less supply. Prices keep continuing. What's going to actually happen is a lot of these buyers unfortunately going to keep getting pushed out. So I think for them, instead of just being busy or just being worried, I'll save an extra $200 a week, actually look at what you can do now. Make the decision now. I wouldn't, my perspective, like just the same in business, if I need to make a decision, most of my decisions are made straight away. If something comes to me, let's act on it right now. Let's not wait 2 weeks. Yeah. 2 weeks is too late.
Yeah.
I need to have something's coming up in the business, something's coming up for our clients. Like, just what is it right now? Let's address it head on right now.
Yeah.
Same thing with my personal, then now that carries on into my personal life where I'm like, what is it that I need to face with myself? What do I need to do? And not the right word to use is what I need to do, but it's just what's happening right now and what do I need to face and what's the clear action to take right now, and just take the action. Yeah. And you really get so much momentum and your life completely changes very quick when you become accountable and you start just taking action straight away. So
I remember when I was an athlete, and I used to say about training sessions, because you get so tired being a triathlete, just perpetually exhausted. And eating all the time. Yeah, eating, sleeping, training. That's it. That's all you're doing. But particularly when I was doing it full time, it's so easy to put things off. So you're like, oh, I'm a little bit tired. I'll do it later. But my mantra was it either happens now or it never happens. Like the things you're putting off, for me anyway, they're just never going to happen. So if there's something that needs to happen, do it now. And for me, that's where I got a lot of self-respect and self-belief from, was the ability just to do the thing that needed to be done when it needed to be done, regardless of how I felt about it.
Yep.
And they used to say in triathlon, my coaches used to say, if you don't want to do a session rather, just do the warm-up. So warm-ups are normally 15, 20 minutes. And if you still feel terrible after that, don't do it. But you do the warm-up and you're like, oh, actually I don't feel too bad. And then, blah, blah, blah. So you were starting to talk about the Queensland market. So do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yep.
look, we're building in Brisbane, out to Toowoomba to Sunny Coast. So we're covering pretty much the footprint within southeast Queensland. We haven't expanded into other regions at this point.
The Golden Triangle, as they call it.
Yes. Look, it's been interesting. I'm, as a builder and working with developers closely, we get to see a lot of things coming next year that others don't see the actual retail price of today. And what's being forecast and what's coming, and the lack of supply coming from the very people that are developing it and with council approvals. Probably the biggest issue I see, which is really good to talk about, is the actual thresholds that are available right now in Queensland. And that's probably the biggest.
What do you mean, the thresholds?
The thresholds with the Felds product and the first home buyers grant. So majority of people that want to buy their first home, the biggest issue that everyone's facing right now, and with the election going on, and I think Liberals currently winning. I don't think the votes are finished, but
Liberals have won. It's happened.
They have?
Yeah.
Oh, I've missed the news yesterday. So on that basis, though, they're looking at like incentivising deposits and lower deposits for servicing and all that. But I think the biggest thing that, on my perspective, that I'd love to make people aware of is, even if you have a bigger deposit, and even if you have a bit of servicing, what's really compromising a lot of people, and where the niche market really sits for majority of business, or I would say buyers buying in the market, is sub 750,000. Right now, due to all the land prices and build costs rising, it's becoming very rare that you can get that available stock within the locations that a lot of people want. So it's becoming further and further out. Right now, the government, I haven't seen any talks about it, but they should really be reviewing the actual thresholds themselves. It's been like that for years. Property prices have grown on how much in 4 years, and they haven't increased the thresholds at this point.
So let me just expand on this for people who maybe don't know what you're talking about. So in Queensland, you have the first home owners grant, which at the moment is $30,000.
Yep.
Now, that $30,000 is known as the first homeowners grant boost, and that is due to run out at the end of the financial year, I think.
Yes.
Which would mean, in the event they don't extend it, that will go back down to $15,000. But the price threshold for that is $750,000.
Yes.
So if you purchase a property worth $751,000, you're not getting that $30,000. So that's the first thing. If you're in Melbourne, it is the same price for the first homeowners grant, as in $750,000, but it's only 10 grand on the grant. The next thing you're talking about is, pardon me, the first home loan deposit scheme, or the first home guarantee. They've used different names for it. So the first home guarantee, the government will guarantee your loan, meaning that you can buy with a 5% deposit without having to pay lender's mortgage insurance. So typically what that's going to save a first home buyer is somewhere between, I don't know, like 20 to 30 grand, maybe 20 to 35 grand, depending on your purchase price. Now, the price cap threshold for that in Queensland is $700,000, and in Victoria, in Melbourne, is $800,000. Now, in Queensland, you essentially can't get a property for under 700 grand. I mean, you can, but it's difficult to get a new property for under 700.
And the type of product, you only can build a house so small. So then you're getting buyers that are purchasing the smallest block they can get, but some blocks are only 300, or some are only going to be 400 in that stage, and then they're putting a small 4-bedroom home on there to achieve these price points.
Yeah.
It's not a great outcome.
So the interesting thing is, and this is what you're alluding to, well, not even alluding to, you just straight out said it, is prices, particularly in Queensland, have kept going up. So the first home loan deposit scheme is really the big one for both Victoria and Queensland. Yep. Where the fog is bigger in Queensland, obviously, because it's the 30 grand. But with the first home loan deposit scheme, when they first came out with this, Melbourne was the second most expensive city in Australia. And Brisbane was, I don't know, fourth or fifth. It doesn't really matter. It was cheaper is the point. So they made the threshold 700,000 in Brisbane, but they made it 800,000 in Melbourne to account for the price difference. Now, Queensland is worth more than Melbourne, but that first home loan deposit scheme threshold hasn't changed.
Yes.
Which means people are priced out.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's just the background, just for those who didn't know about the grants.
Yeah, and so the government and and they're looking at different let's say they're even keeping the fog at that amount, or the Felds product going, or increasing
Felds, for those who don't know, is first home loan deposit scheme.
Yes. Sorry, my short terminology.
No, that's all right.
Doesn't help for the people not in industry.
The only thing that's short about you, mate. Again, for those who don't know, Big Tommy Egan stands at what, like 6'7"?
6'6". I'm just shy. So like for me, it gets exciting when there's going to be change in there. But in this current market, the best thing that they could do is not just looking at increasing certain deposit amounts or keeping the current ones, or the banks changing their lending policies to clients to be able to afford an extra 20 grand on their loan. If they don't fit those thresholds, it's a massive. Some of them, that means if they can't get the 30 grand, how long does it take them to save 30 grand? So 5 years?
Yeah.
Well, now you've just pushed out how many people in the market. So on my perspective, they really need to review increasing that to, let's say it's 750 and they need to factor in some time, at least go to 900, 950 for what's coming, and then put the Felds product at least to 100k under that at 850. And that's going to then help incentivise a lot of first home buyers still to be able to buy in Southeast Queensland market, because they're just getting pushed out. Or they want to buy in 20Ks of the CBD and now they're going to buy at 50. And then where's it going to go from there? Because at this point in time, we're looking at areas like out past to Bow Desert, if you're in Southeast Queensland, out past to Fernvale or Lockyer Valley. And those prices are getting up to over the thresholds of 700, especially because if you go out to Lockyer Valley, the soil is highly reactive, so there's a lot more additional build costs to actually build on the site. And the land prices, because the demand's so high, because these areas that no one wanted to touch 12 months ago are now the highest priority, hottest stock, because simply of price. Everything is driven by price at this stage. People go, I don't want to live 20 minutes further out. It's like, people are buying what they can afford. And, for our perspective, this is where all of our, our volume is coming from in these affordable areas. Even myself, we purchased land in these areas because this is going to be the focus for the years to come, because it's just going to come down to affordability, in my perspective.
Yeah. So I guess two things here. Pardon me. Two things here. The first is, when it comes to the grants, first homeowners grant is state-based. So the states decide, whether or not they're going to pay that, what the thresholds are and how much it is. The first home loan deposit scheme is a federal product, so the federal government does it. So I don't know what's going to happen. The reality is both of them could be pulled. We're talking about increases, but no one's even said that it's going to continue.
That's right. Or reduced with the fog, and then the Felds gets pulled.
Yeah, and end of financial year. That look, I hope it doesn't happen. I mean, if that happens, you've just wiped out 90% of the first home buyer market.
Owner occupiers, and then who you're relying on to buy.
Yeah, I mean, they do that. I might even vote Greens.
They didn't get a seat.
So that's the first thing, and I think the point you're getting at there, which is a really good point, is there is a level of urgency here, where, I mean, if the government's handing out money, you got to take it while it's there, And in Queensland, for example, $30,000 fog, 30 grand saving on your stamp duty plus your vacant land concessions. You're looking at 65 grand that you're saving that you would otherwise need to come up with before you buy a property.
Yep.
And that's the urgency. The other thing you're talking about there as well, though, and this is, so as long as I've been in this game, the same discussion has been going on where everyone's buying on the urban fringe, but where the urban fringe is changes. So if we take Queensland for an example, when I first started working in this industry, it's like, oh, Park Ridge, who's bloody going to live there? Oh, Pimpama, arse end of the earth, who'd want that?
Yep.
Where Pimpama, you're looking at $1 million properties now. If you could get one, which you can't get one, like they're not developing them there anymore. But if we go south of Brisbane, it went Park Ridge, oh, who'd want that? Then it went Logan Reserve, which was next door. Oh, my God, who would want that? Then it went Jimboomba, oh, who'd want to live there? Then it went Glen Eagle, oh, who'd want to live there? Then it went Bow Desert, oh, who would want to live there? But the reality is, as long as I've been doing this, and, I think as long as you live, where the urban fringe will keep moving out. So...
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where Park Ridge was right on the edge, 4 or 5 years ago, now it's sort of Glen Eagle, Bow Desert is on the edge. Yep. But you go another 4 or 5 years, there's going to be more places. People keep moving here. The population keeps growing.
Yeah, and look, and there's another layer on that as well. When you're going further out, depending on the council that it falls under, and Logan is a perfect example, they don't allow smaller blocks. So the developers, when they're developing 50 lots in an estate, let's say 80% have to be 450 square metres, 15 by 30. There's no 300, so it's like, well, you can't develop land only so cheap, and now you can't do a smaller block. Now your affordability is even higher in that area. So when you go further out on these cusps, because these councils are, I understand what they're trying to also do by having larger blocks, but the problem is you're going out there and then you have minimum requirements you have to stick within to develop that. You can't do smaller blocks to even make it more, cheaper again and cheaper for a 700K purchase. It's like, well, if you go out to Bow Desert, it's still going to be a minimum of a 400 or 450 block. There's no 300s approved. So then, they've got to look at what they're factoring in for the future. I know they're trying to protect the estates and the size of the dwellings.
Yeah.
But affordability is the problem. So people are going further out for a lower price point, but then the land's bigger, then the land costs more. So we're having this other issue that's occurring when you're coming out to these areas because the councils out in these further areas haven't changed.
So if I was to put my member of the Greens hat on for a little while, get my double barrel surname going. No, I'm kidding. If I was to like approach it from that angle, what I would say is, or what I imagine the member of the Greens would say is, well, why don't these greedy developers just reduce their prices? Because essentially what you're saying is, and I've seen this in Park Ridge, like they're not letting you go below 450. So we've got this stock coming on, but for first home buyers, no one can afford it because it's too expensive.
Yep.
So why don't the greedy developers just reduce their prices?
That's a good question. I'm going through that on a site at the moment that I've purchased, and you're paying your acquisition cost to do it is substantially high because it's such the stock to buy land, people are overpaying even to get it and then land bank it. And then you've got huge funds, especially from down south. I'm noticing when we're doing our research, they'll purchase a site and sit on it for 10 or 15 years so they can overpurchase it and they have some fund that's covering those costs. A local developer can't have that ability, and they want to also turn over and pay their wages and keep the business continuing. So they've got to buy the site. Acquisition cost is currently substantially high to the point of a lot of developers aren't bothering because the risk is getting too high to purchase. And then on top of that, the construction cost to actually build it, like the building costs have been, this is increased substantially in cost. So to deliver the project, they're trying to make the same margins they did previously, just to be able to run overheads in a business. So to just make it smaller, you can't do that. You just, it's not possible for a developer to just reduce the price because the cost to build it is so much. Civil costs, development costs, and what are the other things as well that we didn't touch on, which is a perfect point, is the councils are taking so long to approve a DA. And then developers are rallying to go behind them going, why are you taking 2 years to approve a DA?
So a DA is a development approval for a subdivision. For
Yeah,
example.
so you buy a site and you want to build 50 lots on there, the council will tell you what size they have to be and what you have to stick within, the parameters around that. And from that point of view, the construction point of view for us is you work out your cost on what type of blocks you're selling, what are they worth, and you work out if the project even stacks up or not. But when you then lodge for that DA approval subject to that site layout, they either say yes or no. Instead of saying yes or no in a month or 3 months, they can take a very long period of time. So, and you've got to support evidence if you want to try and change a layout, or you go, well, we want to reduce area, but we'll still look after the aesthetics of that location and we'll get neighbours' approval. That doesn't mean they're going to accept that point of view. Look, a developer could go, it's not my bread and butter, so someone can dive a lot further in, but on a high level, I think that they need to be approving these sites a lot quicker. It's going to slow down the amount of price increases because there's a lack of availability, so people are just putting the price up due to nothing being available.
Supply and demand, yeah.
It's going to help. And when you straight away, it's going to help that initial point of view and also help the everyday person having options of what they want to purchase. But there's layers to that. But if they were to focus on not just making the development smaller, but if they were actually looking on the other point of view as well, it could change the environment quite quickly just on those two things. Fast approvals would help and the size of blocks would help. But the councils need to be looked at, the government needs to be looked at on that point of view.
Yeah, so what you're saying is if you speed up approvals, it will bring on more stock, and if there's more stock available, it will stabilise pricing. Because at the moment, there's a situation where there's more buyers than there is blocks of land to buy.
Yeah.
And when it happens, people put prices up.
Yep.
Yeah, which...
And then the contracting people also put their prices up, which is also not just like that person's retaining the additional profit. So, for example, if the market's really busy and you're a builder and it's a lack of trades, it's not the builder putting the price up for additional margin. It's that area. Like if you go to a more what would I say the correct terminology would be? If you go to a location like Toowoomba, for example, there's a lack of trades.
Yeah.
They're aware of that.
Yeah.
And if it's busy out there, their price per square metre to build anything just becomes high because they say so.
Yeah, it's really annoying. There's like a Toowoomba tax that all the builders have because all the trades have it.
And they just refuse. So it's like, okay, so the person that's a tiler to rock up and do the job, regardless of supply, like we can supply all that to you, the tiler in those locations goes, I want double the amount per hour. Or technically it'd be per square metre, and then they would work out how many hours it takes.
Yeah.
They just decide because there's no supply of that. So when it's busy, it's not just the builders putting the price up because it's busy because of this environment. It's actually the cost of it the demand increases, all the other costs, same as the developer. The civil contractors are busier. They know it's in demand. Prices go up. This is where you're in a challenging environment as well. And as a builder, this is the frustrations that you can face. Trying to expand into further areas, there's very much communities that drive that. And at the end of the day, if you want to build on service and quality, you don't want to be having guys come from one location to the other. Okay, so when can you go back? If there's defects or rectification work that you need done, oh, well, I can't get there till next Thursday. Well, that's going to slow down the job for the next period of a week because I can't proceed until you do that. It's very important as a builder that you employ the locals and you employ as much as you can, which is our approach. Is we haven't gone and said, all right, we're going to get people to stay up there. We're going to go ship people from Brisbane to go to Toowoomba. We're just going all of the local trades, all the local suppliers. We want to use all of that workforce, which is great for the community. But on top of that, you have to be conscious the very people that are asking and keep pushing the price, they're cutting themselves out of work in the future. It's hot now, but when it cuts off and goes cold, it's like, well, you're a part of price rises that were not really required. But anyway, it's just an interesting perspective that it's people just think the developers put up the cost or the builder, but it's like
Everyone's putting up the cost.
Everyone's putting up the cost, and then you just have this constant run to the top where you're like, where's this going to go? Like right now. Like it was quiet after COVID and it boomed, and then it's quietened down last year. And since then it's moved due to the interest rates not continuing to rise last year. And it's now picked up the market significantly. And since the government done the boost in November last year, it was. Since then, it's really, I guess, made the environment move very quickly. And now it's a really hot market. This is where we just got to be careful that we can also undo things because we've now priced ourselves out of the market. And it's not just like the builder or the developer, there's a combination of so many things. So while the banks are working on serviceability, but then it's a lack of deposits, how about you look at the thresholds? Well, we could keep going back to it, but there's so many things that need to be looked at than just a client can service 20 grand or we can give them an extra $5,000 deposit. That's not going to be the only solution that needs to be looked at. I really think they need to understand everything and view. It shouldn't be pigeonholed is the way that I'm trying to put it.
Yeah.
You can't just go, there's one aspect that I need to focus on. If you're going to come into construction and brand new homes, you got to look at developments, councils, builders. You've got to have a look at the whole thing going, how can we actually make this work together instead of just throwing something out there that doesn't work for anyone.
To be fair, I think the Queensland and federal government have largely got the incentives for first home buyers right, where they've got the big fog and then they've got the first home guarantee, which gets rid of the lender's mortgage insurance. But they just haven't moved the prices as time's moved on. And if they up the thresholds, then people could keep getting in.
Yeah, they've done a great job setting it all up. It's just it hasn't been reviewed. When was the threshold set?
Yeah.
I would look back and go, well, was it 5 years ago? It's just you need to keep reviewing that moving forward.
The other issue is that the basement level, like the entry level, keeps going up, and that's a real problem where you got to be earning 130, 140 grand.
Well, it's a single applicant you can't afford.
Yeah.
You can't even afford a house and land in southeast Queensland on less than that. And if you have any debt, then you can't buy anything.
Yeah, well, that's no debt, no kids, no nothing. And you got to think, like, the median wage is 80 or 90 grand. So you've got to earn close to double that to get into a house as a single person. And that's a problem. That's a big problem.
What's been really interesting, actually, in the last... It's very new that I've seen it. Maybe you've seen differently. But in the last 2 months, I've noticed where parents and children are buying together to move into the property to afford it. Like, the affordability is such an issue that it's not just separate couple, the one family, husband and wife buying. It's like, no, the mum and dad. And not only are they buying, what's their retirement plan because they don't have enough funds to retire. So I had 2 different buyers literally a week ago buying with their parents. And that was also their retirement plan of, we can afford this now so we can get into the market, but my parents are going to be here to retire, which is an interesting perspective. But it's been interesting because I haven't seen that previously being spoken about or seen that, because obviously I'm reviewing contracts and seeing who's actually purchasing, where are they from. All of those details are something I like to keep track of. Just knowing the data is really important to me.
Yeah. So we're obviously a lot more at the cold face of this than you are. And when we're looking at whether or not someone can get into a property, if they can't, there will be one of 3 things that's holding them back. So it's either their credit scores and their credit history, their deposit and costs, so the amount of savings, or the servicing. And the biggest issue we're butting heads with at the moment is the servicing. And all of our guys run through those questions. So, do you have a friend who's looking to get into a house? Do you have a sibling? What about parents? Because we've got to get the income from somewhere. But I think the important thing for people to know with those 3 things, I don't think there's ever a situation where you can't get into a home, because there's always a reason And that reason needs to be overcome.
Yep.
Now, for some people, I get that you can't overcome some of the reasons. Like if I've literally got no one else to buy with and I've got a low income, well, there's not much that I can do. But at least you know what the issue is and what needs to be overcome. And what I say to all of our guys who are dealing with customers is no one should get off the phone from us and you just go, you can't buy a house. Because that's not right. They should know the reason it is and some ideas as to what they can do to overcome it. And for a lot of those people, they can. Like, I can't tell you the number of people that we've had buy, particularly with siblings and friends. But yeah, parents is coming into the mix now as well.
Yeah, like this is their retirement plan.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's interesting what's occurring and what the future they're looking at, but this is just the trends that we're now seeing as a difference. But tapping into additional income can change it. And I don't think you even asking the question, most people don't even consider it. Or even buying a house with their parents or buying a house with additional members. I don't think people would actually think about that.
Yeah.
And like you said, we could actually provide a solution to you. Have you looked at this? And it's mutual beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, this is what I say to our guys. So you get on the phone with people and it's about finding out, what the real block is. And the real block for people is mostly emotional. It's fears, stuff like that. Making sure that you understand what that is so you can help people overcome it. And then if we can overcome that, the practicalities like the money and the servicing and that's all just problem solving. Yeah, so I think if we were to sum this up, I think what you're saying is that there's a few things. So there's no guarantee that the grants are all going to stick around. Probably the biggest issue that we're seeing at the moment is servicing, but the reason it's servicing is because we've still got the grants to get into the properties, and if they disappear, then it'll be a real basket case for people. And I think some of the recommendations that you're really giving is for people to really think outside the box. Can you buy with parents? Like, what do you need to do to get into a home? And the moment is really now, because if you don't do it now, like what you're seeing looking forward is nothing's going to change. It's certainly not going to get better. If anything, it's going to get worse.
Yes. What I'm seeing for next year, like the next 12 months, and I'm getting a look into what's not available today on what a person rocking up to a retail sales office to purchase a block of land. I'm looking at future stages due to relationships so I can get access to what's coming up in the future. Yeah,
so just to put some meat on the bones to this for people who don't know. So what happens with builders and companies like us is we've obviously got a steady flow of clients coming through.
Yep.
And what we need to do is we need to forecast what we're going to do in the future. So, we're going to do whatever it is, 40, 50 clients a month. So we're going to need stock. We believe we'll need it here, and here. So we go out to land developers and go, hey, what have you got coming up? And then what we try and do is we take options on that land where we say, hey, we want that block of land. We're going to have some clients for it in the future.
Yes.
So what it means is you get to see what's happening sort of 12, 18 months down the track.
Yes.
Where if your average first home buyer goes into a land office where you're just talking to the land agent who has what's in front of them, where you're talking to people at a different level of the company who are dealing with stuff in the future.
Yeah.
And that's why you have such a good insight into what's coming up. So tell me, what is this insight that you've got?
That's a good point. I think, you've already mentioned on it, the Feld's product is becoming non-existent, even if you're going out to these outer rims at this point, because the developers can't build the block small enough to make it achievable in price, because when you go further out, typically the councils want bigger blocks. So we're on a very tipping point at this moment. If that doesn't change, Felds will be gone completely.
Yeah, well, not gone, just obsolete.
When I say the product's not available.
Yeah.
So the product's available from the federal government, but the product's not available. You can't buy land cheap enough with a cheap enough house.
All right, so give me an insight now. Like I'm ready to buy now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get under the $700,000 threshold. I'm in southeast Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some suburbs where I could buy in.
Yeah, good point. I would go to, well, we'll do it in the 3 regions. We'll do North Brisbane first. Right now, North Brisbane, you'd be predominantly Morayfield's now out, or you'd be looking at Upper Caboolture as your only option, which is a new precinct that's being, it's a master plan community. It's being developed by multiple developers all combined together. That would be your only option on the north side of Brisbane.
Are there blocks available there?
There is some that probably, like, releases are probably a month ago. There's some that are expected to come before Christmas. But after that point, if you don't buy in the next release, potentially that price point will be gone as well. In the previous release, it did fit the 700K price point. In the one that's coming, potentially the 300 or 280 blocks, they're even getting down to 280 square meters. You potentially fit, depending on what the price indication is in that particular area. So I would be making a decision on that quickly. After that point, it'll all become 750. Morayfield itself will no longer, and we'll do the north side 700 and 750. Upper Caboolture will fit the 750K budget. From what I'm seeing on price points that are being shown to me for next year, it'll still fit the 750 budget for the first 6 months. After that, the window's too far to judge. Morayfield, which was a very popular area on the north side, being closer to the Brisbane CBD, people didn't want to go out another 15 minutes to Caboolture. That's definitely 700 is going to be gone. Probably now it's gone. Next year, 750 is probably, if they can't get a 300 square metre block, which is a 10 metre frontage block, you've got a window of the next 3 months, my guess is, or else you're not going to be able to buy in Morayfield at all under 750 for the fog either.
What about if I went out like Woodford, Kilcoy?
If you went out to the west of that, I'm trying to base it off the north, but if you went northwest, like the west of that area, potentially, but then you're going to run into the same issue that we're running into where the blocks can only be developed so small. Yeah. And the price to develop them are still costing you so much. And because it's a per square metre rate on the blocks, you're not, like right now, I think I was actually talking to Aaron in your company, and we're looking at Kilcoy, which is a substantial area west of Caboolture. Right now, the cheapest block's 300. So to meet the 700K is, look, if you had the build prices in north of Brisbane, potentially you'll meet the 700, but the problem is that to build in Kilcoy is a different trade base again for locals. So
you start getting the Toowoomba tax.
You start getting the additional tax because there's a lack of trades. And then the trades that are busy in Morayfield going, well, I can earn the same money in North Brisbane and I don't have to drive 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back and I earn the same. So why would I leave? Where the trades out in that location that, so far west, they've only got a very small pool of trade. So then you have the tax that comes on top. So you're like, well, by the time a builder factors in all the additional cost that it wouldn't, just based on all the trade square meterage, and for suppliers, they're going to charge you more delivery cost depending on what's being delivered and where their location of the hub is, because they've got locations. Now all of a sudden the price has increased. That's already there. So even from my perspective, being out there and the land can't be any smaller than it is. Yeah, they're bigger blocks, but the minimum land price is 300. Where's that going to go? So next year, again, that's going to be the outer west areas are struggling as well. If you go more north of Upper Caboolture, then you start to go to Sunny Coast where the price jumps again. So it's Upper Caboolture and Belmere. There's a lot more developments that people aren't aware of that's coming up in Belmere, which will be very well priced to the Upper Caboolture pricing. Those will be the 2 hotspots for my. That's my pick for next year.
Oh, hot tip. Someone clip that up.
If you want the best value for land and the cheapest price, that's going to be the best location on the north side. If you go to...
What about if we go west?
Of...
Brisbane, Ipswich, Toowoomba.
Yep. So if we go west of Brisbane, predominantly the biggest area of growth and what we've seen being really popular in the last 12 months was Ripley. So it's on the back end of Springfield, which falls under Ipswich City Council.
Can you still get in under 700 in Ripley?
So not anymore. That was previously to 12 months. So that was a very big area. Then behind that, which was popular previously, which was Deebing Heights. Now, even at Deebing Heights, the price point is not 700. So that rules out that corridor, which was probably the biggest area of growth in the past, I don't know how many years for Ipswich. So now where do you go for 700 and 750? You're going to have to go behind the back of Ipswich. So that area being Walloon, that area being Rosewood, and that area being Fernvale and Lowood.
Are there blocks available out there?
Right now, good question. Right now, if you go to Fernvale or Lowood, which is more affordable than Walloon, because Walloon's closer to more infrastructure and right next to the highway, so it's a premium price. To fit the 700k Felds product, you have to go out to Felds and Lowood. And right now, when I checked last week, there's not one single block available in that location.
So tell me where I can buy, not where I can't.
Well, we're just talking about the areas. So right now, there's releases coming up. And based on those releases of what I've seen, you'll still be able to get a 700k price point for the first quarter of next year when the releases come out based on current prices that I've optioned. You'll be able to fit the 700,000 price point that's coming out, but they're going to be brand new estates. They're not available at this point.
So talk to me about land registration, what it is, what first home buyers need to be wary of, contract conditions,
it's a good point.
Type of thing.
Yes.
All of this comes into play in this type of market. Anyway.
Yeah, so as the demand's picking up in these areas, the developers can't develop it quick enough. And because of that, they're releasing land before it's developed is the best way to put it. When we say the word registration, it's not settled. It's not currently built, ready to build on. And for our perspective and what buyers are seeing, and like you said, there's risks, which we'll touch on. But right now, a developer sells out. They launch in Fernvale, for example, at stage 1. Stage 1 sells out and registrations in February next year. So after February next year, you can then settle and buy the block. It's not that far out. Based on that time frame, you could potentially, I guess let's look at it this way. Let's base it on December, the first stage. Let's do it this way. And right now, because December's coming up, when you sign a land contract and when you sign a build contract, specifically for the land, the bank will want to get a valuation completed. But a bank can only get a valuation completed if the block of land is pegged out and the valuer can inspect it on site. Now, right now, if you get rule of thumb, it could vary depending on the developer, but rule of thumb, it's approximately about 3 months out, about 12 weeks from registration of when you can get a valuation. So if you secure a land contract 6 months out from registration, you can't get valuations.
And what's the impact of that?
So the impact of that is significant for a purchaser. Now, depending on the location and comparable sales, a bank will send someone out to do a valuation on that property. So they'll look at the land price, they'll look at the build price.
So sorry to interrupt you. But what I meant was, what's the impact of not being able to do a valuation?
Oh, I was going to lead into that.
Sorry, carry on, sir. I shouldn't have interrupted.
Yeah, I was going to just, because it was a good point to touch on what it is, like how what first works, and then what's the impact of that. So you have a land and build contract that you've put together. The valuer will go out and look at the comparable sales going, is this worth what you could resell it for on the market? Do they believe this is the correct price that they believe will work? Now, depending on the valuer, they have different opinions. Now, the issue that can occur for a buyer, and there's a couple of levels to this, if they secure a block 6 months out and the developer has terms in the land contract that says there is no finance clause, well, now you've got to pay a deposit. And once you sign that contract and pay the deposit, you can't get that deposit back. You've gone unconditional. Now, one of the risks that you are taking on at that point is if the market changes in the future, or the value doesn't support that area or the new prices because the developers put it up due to cost 30 grand and there's no comparable sales at that price, and the valuation comes in short and the buyer can't actually cover the difference in value, which you can touch on. But if it was a 700k package and the value said it's worth 670, you've got to come up with $30,000. And if you can't settle on that block of land with a land developer, now you lose your deposit. So that's one risk. I think always, like for me, it's like, can a client lose money in one perspective? The other risk that you have is if it's 6 months out and you can't get pegging, for a lot of frustration that we go through, is more of the aspect of you can't actually start finance without a valuation. Like a buyer can go get approved, but depending on the value that the value of the bank appoints, they might not value the product. So again, I'll probably let a broker go on to the in-depth side of it. But in short, if you can't get finance and the developer has a period of time, you're going to have to keep getting request extensions, and the developer might not allow extensions. And if you can't get your finance lodged and you can't get the valuation, you can go and get your finance lodged and approved subject to evaluation. But the risk that you run is the developer will give you 21 days finance. You can't get it pegged, but regardless of if you got a valuation or not, you'll have to make a decision if you can actually waive finance or not. So the risk that you run there is losing your deposit, going under contract, the developer potentially cancelling it, and you securing a block that you can't. Or another point of view, which I probably haven't touched on, is what happens if your financial situation changes in 3 months and you've secured a contract, you've secured the price, but the property is 6 months out. When you get finance approvals from a bank, and I could be wrong, but when you get a finance approval, a formal approval, you only have 90 days. And if 90 days surpasses and it's outside of your contract time frame and you haven't been able to settle finance, then you have to resubmit everything. And if you've lost your job, things change, or you're not doing as much overtime as you were previously. So these are all the things that can, even though you're trying your best, this can be out of your control. So for our perspective, it's always better to purchase land within 3 months of registration because it's pegged. But obviously in this environment, it's very challenging. The other upside that you can have that people don't talk about is if you secure a contract and you purchased it for $300,000 and the market's climbing and it is 6 months away, by the time it registers and you've been able to get finance, you are allowed extensions because a lot of developers are happy to keep extensions going. Due to that, they put it in the contract up front. The block of land could have went up 40 grand by the time when you signed it 6 months ago. And the developer does forecast, well, it's going to be worth more in 6 months. I'll put the land price slightly higher. The buyer's purchased, the land price has gone even higher than what the developer expected. They haven't even done anything. They've just signed a contract, paid $1,000 that's refundable. There's also pros to it as well, and I guess we can continue on that aspect. But what's probably going to be, what I see that's worse that's happening in this market, going back to the original question, is if developers release stage 1 and it's December, it sells out, and then they sell out straight away, they're going to want to keep selling contracts while the market's hot because they've got to manage their risk. Well, the next stage of registration is 12 months out. So then everything's further out. So the issue that we're seeing right now in the environment is developers going, well, I'm trying to predict what the land price is in December next year. So the land contract price can be substantially higher than what it is in current market value at this moment because they're forecasting that it's going to be X at that period of time in December. This is what we're seeing that's causing huge increases it's probably never been as worse now than it's the worst it's been now in the last 3 months because everything's selling out. Developers want to keep bringing on land and registrations pushing out that far. This is now you're having significant. So it's like, well, the previous stage was a 10 grand increase. This one's 30. One, how val's going to work, how's the environment. We got to factor all that in. So you do have risk, but there's huge upside. But this is what's also happening to what I forecast for next year. This is one of the main things that are going to cause the price increases because the developers are trying to factor in what the value's worth in the future, and they're predicting so far out to keep the stock being released. Where does that leave everyone? Huge price increases, on my perspective.
So how does your average first home buyer mitigate some of this risk? What can they do?
I think it's more of a question for you as a specialist. I had the last 10 minutes.
So I think some of the things you were talking about were important. So ideally, signing up for land that's registered or is going to register within 3 months. Yep. We have a 3-month rule, and then we push out to 6 months if we know who the developer is and they've proven? Got a good track record.
Yep.
But yeah, ultimately, if people are fanging for the block, it's a risk that sometimes some people have got to take. And as long as you're going into it with your eyes open, you know what could happen. This is the unfortunate part of a hot market. And it's not something that I particularly enjoy.
No.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't touch on probably the locations at that point of view, which was your original question for all 3 corridors before I lose track.
Oh, yeah.
So Fernvale and Lowood will be the sub 700K stock for the first quarter of next year is my prediction. Walloon will push, and with the additional build cost due to soil out there as well, that'll be a 750K product. But again, you've got a window from what I'm reviewing. You probably got 4 to 6 months before that will no longer be 750, and then you're going to go out to areas further out. And
Like where?
well, the predominant area next is Rosewood, next to that area. But if you keep going, so the Lockyer Valley is basically from, and I could say this wrong, but from, let's say, Walloon, where that highway runs from the back of Ipswich to Toowoomba. Yep. You've got that one road in and out on that main area. So,
like Gatton, those sort of areas?
Yeah, so you have, and I'm not too familiar with the area because I've only recently been out there, but you have Rosewood. Then the next step out that you've got with available land would be somewhere like plain land. But plain land, depending on the DA approval and depending on the land, some of the blocks are like 3,000 square metres. So then they have a high price tag. You can't get a 500 square metre block. Now, some estates do, which is great that the council's obviously supported that at that time, but there's a lack of availability out there. But right now, if you were to purchase sub 700 and sub 750, that would be your next spot. And then it goes from plain land, and then you'd go to probably Gatton, but there's not much available at Gatton. And then you now cross over into the Toowoomba region. And that's where you become at the base of Toowoomba. You then get into Helidon, and then you go into Toowoomba, and then the outskirts of Toowoomba, which is what we've both expanded into recently. Well, you've been there before I have, but that's where I've recently expanded the business. Now, that's where you're able to get smaller blocks again, because you're coming into that closer to town on the fringe, as you say, where you can get blocks for 400, 450,000.
Yeah, but you paint blocks. You can get them cheaper than that, no?
400 to 450 square metres.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as you go into the Toowoomba City Council, you pay 30, 40 grand more for your home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, it jumps substantially. The other thing with Toowoomba is it's not just 30 to 40 grand on that aspect with detail. It's a large contributor to that area is the reactive soil. It's an E-class area, most of that. So it's highly reactive. So the additional engineering costs and peering is substantial on the build. And they have areas out there that it's like the worst rating you can get on a soil test. So that impacts it significantly where it's all highly reactive pretty much. Yeah. It's very rare that you don't have it, which is then causing another unnecessary $10,000 to $20,000, even if not more.
So reactive soil, correct me if I'm wrong here, means the soil moves a bit. So you've got to use different foundations to account for that. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Different slab thicknesses, additional peering, and then the depths of the peering. Yep. So when there is movement, you're not having engineering issues with the structure cracking and things like that. So this is why you have to then spend all that cost on top of it just due to the area location. That's what happens at the back of Ipswich. So you go into that corridor, some areas can be that bad, but anything up in Toowoomba seems to be, based on soil reports so far with what we've done, is quite common to have that.
All right, so let's sum up the West. What are the hotspots in the West for the next 3 to 6 months?
Walloon, Rosewood, Fernvale, Lowood, Plainland.
Roger.
South, we'll just do rule of thumb. Straight away, you're looking South Maclean, Flagstone, Jimboomba, and Bow Desert. And then if you want to swing behind the coast, if you say that, but it's Yarrabilba. They're your options.
Yeah. Problem with Yarrabilba is, they're selling stuff that registers in 2026, is it? Or December?
That's right.
Yeah. So Rego is a long, long way out there.
To us, we just go, there's no, what does that look like even on a build contract perspective? Let's not worry until it's closer. Yeah. Secure your block of land if you like, but we're not going to do anything on the build side.
Yeah. And then South Maclean, Flagstone, can you get blocks in there? South Maclean was a good one. We had Pebble, Pebble Creek and Flourish. Yep. Have we got any blocks in there that people are able to get?
Yeah. So those specific estates, yes. But again, Pebble Creek's coming to near at an end. Registration's a lot closer, where if you go to Flourish, They're now released due to it's fitting those price points. It's now the most popular stock. You're looking at December next year. Pebble Creek's coming to an end.
Yep.
Flourish actually purchased the site that was owned by the original developer of Pebble Creek. That's how actual Flourish is adjoining to Pebble Creek.
Yep.
Flourish has become so hot in demand that due to fitting both Feld and Fog, its registration is now looking at end of December.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at buying and price point wise where you don't have blocks smaller really in that location, I would be making that a priority straight away for price point to fit Fells. You've got Flagstone as well. That's a massive, it's over 2,000 lot master planned estate if they haven't expanded on it since then when I looked at the numbers, but that's another great area. But again, they predominantly have larger blocks. They do have some smaller, but not the amount that Flourish does to fit those price points. Probably what's the most popular stock to fit the 700K and the 750 and you get a bigger block, say 400 to 600 square meters, has really been that location in between Jimboomba and Bow Desert, which is an area called Glen Eagle.
Yep.
That's been very popular. And then you've also got Bow Desert, which for me is probably going to be the most popular area of focus for everyone next year. And you've got a couple of new developers that have come into that place that are developing 700 plus lots each.
Yep.
So for me right now, if I was to do say the next 6 months, I'd be getting in South Maclean or Flagstone immediately. I would then.
So hotspots in the south of Brisbane next 3 to 6 months for first time buyers.
Yeah, South Maclean, Flagstone, Jimboomba, and Bow Desert.
Nice.
That's it. Nice and clear.
All right, mate. I think we'll wrap this puppy up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any closing thoughts, comments?
I left a deep one last time. Let me ponder for a second.
I think what would be a good closing thought and we've spoken about a lot in this potty, but if you were to leave a first home buyer who's thinking to get into the market soon, what would be your closing thought for them in the current market conditions?
Besides everyone just saying buy right now, due to what we're forecasting for next year. Look, for me, the thing that comes to mind is really just if you can buy it right now and what's coming for the next 12 months, I think that would be the best advice I could actually give you. If you're in the position where you can afford it or you have a partner or a family that you can actually buy and you want to fit the thresholds and get 60 plus thousand from the government while it's available, because again, like you said, some of it's running out and we don't know what's going to happen, that's instant equity for you. Money that you haven't had to work for or save for. The best thing you could do is secure something now and make sure it's got a finance clause. If it's further rego out to protect yourself, you'll get uplift along the way. But I would be buying as soon as I could right now in this area, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on obviously uplift, making more money without having to work for it. And two, you're going to be driving a lot further out if you don't do it now.
Tommy Egan, thanks for coming in.
No worries. Thank you.